For Ashley's loved ones, the conversation had likely felt like a brief moment of reassurance. They had seen her smile, heard her voice, and believed, at least for a short while, that she was safe and doing well. As soon as the screen went dark and there were no more eyes watching, the man she was with dropped the pleasant act he had maintained during the conversation. His demeanor changed completely. What had seemed like calm quickly turned into rage. Ashley was born on July 25, 2002, in the picturesque but relatively quiet town of Vernon, located in the heart of British Columbia, Canada. Unlike many of her peers who were glued to their smartphones, Ashley didn't have her own device when she was 12. Instead, she would spend time using the family laptop, sitting at the kitchen table scrolling through social media, catching glimpses of her classmates' lives, and occasionally chatting with friends online. It was through one of these online chats in 2015 that a mutual friend introduced her to a boy from England named Jack Seal. At the time, Ashley was only 12, while Jack was 16. Although that age gap might have raised some eyebrows if they had met in person, their connection was purely virtual, nothing more than two curious teenagers from different parts of the world talking online. Despite being thousands of miles apart, Ashley and Jack found common ground. They bonded over music, movies, and their mutual desire to escape the limitations of their current lives. Ashley, outgoing and full of energy, brought warmth and excitement to their conversations. Jack, in contrast, was more reserved. He was quiet, almost brooding at times, and seemed to find comfort in the virtual world. His social media presence was strong, and he spent a lot of time online, which made it easier for the two to stay in touch. As their friendship grew deeper, the age gap became less of a focus. Over the following weeks, their connection intensified. What began as casual messages soon evolved into daily conversations, shared secrets, and mutual emotional support. Within 2 months, Ashley started bringing up Jack's name regularly in conversations with her family, especially with her older sister, Haley. Ashley's mother, Christy Jandron, was cautious. Like any concerned parent, she worried that her daughter might be too trusting. The idea that a complete stranger, someone they had never met in person, could be building a relationship with her daughter from across the globe made her uneasy. There were too many unknowns, and Christy feared that Jack might not be who he said he was. But her concerns began to fade as Ashley and Jack moved their conversations from text messages to FaceTime calls, often taking place in the family's living room. Christy could now see Jack's face, hear his voice, and even greet him from time to time. His polite manner and distinct British accent made a positive impression on her. For the next 7 years, they remained in near constant contact. They exchanged messages, video calls, and gifts. Jack often sent Ashley thoughtful presents, plush teddy bears, stylish clothing, a purse, delicate jewelry, and even money on occasion. Over time, he became a regular topic in the Wadsworth household. His name, his face, and stories about him became a familiar presence in their day-to-day lives. Even when they had disagreements or went through rough patches, their time apart was always brief. When Ashley turned 15, her desire to meet Jack in person became stronger. She approached her mother with a bold request. She wanted to visit him in the UK. But Christy was firm in her response. The idea of her teenage daughter traveling alone to meet someone she had only known online felt incredibly risky. She couldn't support such a decision, no matter how much she trusted Ashley's judgment. Ashley, of course, was disappointed. As time went on and both of them matured, their relationship began to shift. Arguments became more frequent, and the once sweet and hopeful tone of their exchanges sometimes gave way to tension and conflict. One recurring issue was Jack's growing jealousy. He became increasingly anxious about the possibility that Ashley might develop feelings for someone closer to home. Perhaps a classmate, someone her age, someone who could actually spend time with her in person. Ashley did her best to reassure him. She told him she loved him, that she had no interest in anyone else. But Jack's insecurities only seemed to grow stronger. During arguments, Ashley would sometimes block him on social media, trying to create some space for herself. But Jack found ways around it. He created new accounts, reached out to her friends and even to her sister, trying to stay in her life in any way he could. Some of Ashley's friends began to worry. To them, Jack's behavior seemed obsessive and controlling. But Ashley, always loyal, defended him. She said he was just intense, just passionate. She believed he meant well. Ironically, some of their arguments stemmed from Jack's own dating history. During times when they weren't speaking, Jack occasionally dated other girls. These actions hurt Ashley deeply, but they never stayed apart for long. Jack also had a fascination with tattoos. In October 2018, when he was nearly 20 years old, and Ashley had just turned 16, he revealed a new tattoo during one of their video calls. It was her name, boldly inked on his arm. For him, the tattoo was a declaration of love. For Christy, it was a red flag. She found the gesture unsettling, especially considering their long-distance and virtual-only relationship. As the years passed, the dynamic between them grew more unstable. Jack's behavior became increasingly controlling, and even though he was thousands of miles away, he seemed to have a constant presence in Ashley's daily life. By the year 2020, Ashley had reached adulthood. She had just turned 18 and was starting to explore life on her own terms. But even as she stepped into this new chapter of independence, her connection to Jack, now a long-standing presence in her life, remained complicated. It was around this time that Ashley began receiving unexpected phone calls and messages, not from friends or family, but from other women. Women who, like her, had been involved with Jack at some point. These conversations were troubling. One caller confided that Jack had become aggressive and overly controlling during their relationship. She even told Ashley that he wouldn't allow her to leave his house and begged her to talk to him, to try and calm him down. Over the years, Ashley had considered ending things many times. Yet Jack always found a way to win her back. He would apologize with apparent sincerity, telling her she was the only girl who truly mattered to him. Ashley started working part-time as soon as she was legally allowed. Her early jobs included shifts at fast food places like McDonald's and Burger King, among others. The hours were long, and the work was tiring, but Ashley was determined to earn her own income. Her very first major purchase from her hard-earned money was an iPad. She no longer had to borrow the family laptop to talk to Jack. Now, she could text and video call him anytime from her own device. Despite the warnings and red flags, Ashley's longing to meet Jack in person never faded. By late 2021, she was financially and legally able to make that dream a reality. She successfully obtained a 6-month tourist visa to the United Kingdom and booked a one-way plane ticket to London. On the morning of November 12, 2021, Ashley hugged her family goodbye. Her father drove her to the airport, offering quiet support while trying to hide his unease. As she settled into her seat on the plane and waited for takeoff, Ashley sent a simple but meaningful message to her family via Snapchat. "I'm in my plane," she wrote. It was short, but her excitement was clear. After nearly 7 years of daily texts, late-night calls, exchanged gifts, and emotional highs and lows, Ashley was about to meet Jack in real life. Upon her arrival, Ashley began posting photos from her time in the UK. She and Jack traveled to various places together, and the images they shared on social media painted the picture of a joyful couple finally united after years of waiting. In every snapshot, Ashley was smiling, her eyes sparkling with hope and affection. For a while, things seemed to match what she had imagined all those years. Jack looked and acted just like he had on video calls, sweet, sentimental, and affectionate. But there was another side to him, one that surfaced in quiet moments when the camera wasn't on. Jack was unemployed and lived off the support of his mother, who lived close by. Ashley, as a tourist, wasn't permitted to work during her stay. This meant they spent almost all of their time together, mostly indoors. At first, this seemed romantic, but the constant proximity quickly became stifling. Ashley started to notice things. Jack didn't appear to have any close friends. His daily life revolved around social media. There were no hobbies, no community involvement, no real goals. She began to feel isolated, especially as Jack showed early signs of controlling behavior. One instance that alarmed her was when he reacted negatively to her speaking casually with a neighbor. It was such a small thing, but Jack's reaction was disproportionate and possessive. Before leaving Canada, a friend from her church had connected her with a group of American missionaries around her age who were scheduled to be in Chelmsford at the same time. Excited by the chance to make friends and attend church services while abroad, Ashley mentioned her interest in meeting them. But Jack firmly disapproved. He didn't want her going to church, meeting others, or forming any social bonds outside of their relationship. Feeling increasingly bored and confined, Ashley kept in touch with the missionaries via private messages, careful not to let Jack know. For the first time, Jack became physically aggressive. The incident began over something Ashley considered trivial. He discovered that she had blocked 2 British phone numbers on her device years ago, and he irrationally assumed they belonged to other men. His reaction was sudden and shocking. Ashley now found herself in a foreign country, thousands of miles away from the safety of her family and home, emotionally and physically vulnerable. Despite the visible signs that something was wrong, she continued to protect Jack in public. The very next day, she updated her Facebook profile photo to an image of Jack hugging her, captioning it, "My bestie," with a red heart emoji. It was a confusing message, one that masked the fear and doubt she was beginning to feel inside. Privately, Ashley confided in her older sister Haley. She told her that Jack wasn't the person she had imagined all those years. The real Jack, the one she lived with, was different, and not in a good way. She was scared of what might happen next but felt trapped between conflicting loyalties. Jack, too, was emotionally unstable. Near the end of December 2021, he experienced a mental health crisis. In an act of desperation, he consumed a large amount of sedative medication. Alarmed and unsure of what to do, Ashley called an ambulance. Jack was transported to a hospital where he received medical care. This deeply distressing incident should have been a clear sign that something was wrong. But Ashley kept it secret from nearly everyone. She didn't mention it to her friends, and she especially didn't tell her mother. The only person she confided in was Haley. Even after all this, Ashley continued to try and make things work, hoping Jack would change, or at least stabilize. But the signs were becoming impossible to ignore. In the following weeks, Jack's seal seemed to transform once again, reverting, at least on the surface, to the sweet, apologetic partner Ashley had fallen for years earlier. Like many manipulative individuals, Jack knew exactly how to appear remorseful when it suited him. He told Ashley everything she wanted to hear, promising that he had seen the error of his ways and was working to become a better person. He acted more gentle, more patient, and more attentive. But beneath the surface, nothing had truly changed. The emotional pendulum continued to swing, and their relationship fell back into a painful cycle. Calm followed by tension, tension followed by conflict, then a brief period of peace again. These cycles repeated until the emotional toll became overwhelming. Ashley had invested so many years into this relationship, and perhaps a part of her still hoped that the person she once loved could return for good. Then came a moment that, in hindsight, marked the irreversible turning point. On January 30th, Jack sent a chilling text message to his sister. "I'm obsessed with Ashley's past," he wrote. Though cryptic to someone outside the situation, those words carried an ominous tone. They revealed the depth of Jack's jealousy and possessiveness, an intense fixation that had now begun to cloud his judgment and spiral into dangerous territory. From that moment, the timeline toward tragedy accelerated rapidly. The following morning, February 1st, 2022, events began to unfold with alarming speed. Just before 8 a.m., the couple's neighbor was jolted by the sound of shouting. Moments later, she heard something that sent chills down her spine. Ashley's voice crying out in distress. Then a knock at her door. When she opened it, she found Ashley standing there in tears, visibly shaken and terrified. Ashley confided that she feared for her safety. Yet despite her fear, she pleaded with the neighbor not to call the police. She was scared, not only for herself, but also for Jack. Trying to de-escalate the situation, the neighbor went to speak with Jack. As he had done so many times before, Jack quickly shifted back into performance mode. Calm and collected, he apologized, explained things away, and promised that everything was fine. He convinced the neighbor that the situation was under control. Seeing no immediate danger and trusting that Jack's demeanor was genuine, the neighbor left. Ashley, perhaps out of hope, or perhaps out of emotional exhaustion, returned to the house. Approximately an hour later, around 9 a.m., another neighbor arrived with a package that had been mistakenly delivered to her unit. As Jack stepped outside to receive it, Ashley seized a rare moment of privacy. She grabbed Jack's phone and quickly called her family back in Canada. It was the first time they heard how serious the situation had become. Ashley didn't hold back. She told her mother, Christy, that she was scared and wanted to come home. Her words were urgent, and they carried a sense of finality. Christy was horrified. Until that moment, she had only suspected that things might not be going well between Ashley and Jack. But now, the reality was undeniable. Without hesitation, Ashley's family booked her a return flight to Canada for February 3rd. Christy also made it very clear to Jack. If anything happened to her daughter again, she would not hesitate to contact the authorities. The conversation between Ashley and her family ended around 3 a.m. in Vernon, which was 11 a.m. in Chelmsford. But almost immediately after the call ended, everything changed. The moment the phone call was over, and the act was no longer needed, Jack dropped the facade. His demeanor shifted instantly, and he lashed out in anger. There was no one physically nearby to intervene. Between 11:22 a.m. and 12:38 p.m., Ashley desperately tried to reach out for help. Using Jack's phone once again, she sent a series of text messages to multiple contacts. She messaged close friends and family back in Vernon, even though it was still the middle of the night for them. She also reached out to church acquaintances she had quietly stayed in touch with in Chelmsford. One message simply read, "It's Ashley. I need your help. It's an emergency, please." Due to the time difference, most of her friends and family in Canada were asleep and didn't see the messages right away. Then, a few hours later, the same contacts received follow-up messages stating that everything was fine and there was no longer any emergency. But something felt off. Those messages didn't sound like Ashley. Unbeknownst to them at the time, Jack had sent those replies himself, attempting to cover up what had happened. Suspicious and uneasy, two of Ashley's church friends in Chelmsford, Jamie Ashworth and Taylor Borden, decided to visit the house on Tennyson Road. When they arrived and received no response at the door, their concern grew rapidly. Trusting their instincts, they called the local police and asked for a welfare check. When officers arrived, they knocked and called out to Jack, who they could see inside through the window. But Jack refused to open the door. At that moment, unknown to the police outside, Jack was on a video call with his sister. In that conversation, he made a chilling admission. He told her what he had done to Ashley. With no time to waste, officers forcibly entered the home. Inside, they found Jack Seal and immediately took him into custody. Officers later reported that he was eerily calm, showing none of the distress or panic one might expect following such a traumatic event. Meanwhile, Ashley's family awoke to a barrage of missed messages and calls. Confused and worried, they tried reaching out to her, but got no response. And then the news began to arrive. It was a moment etched permanently in the mind of Kenneth Wadsworth, Ashley's father. The disbelief, the heartbreak, and the devastating realization that his daughter would not be coming home. Kenneth and his wife flew to the United Kingdom shortly thereafter, not to welcome their daughter back with open arms, but to navigate the painful process of collecting her belongings and bringing her back for a final farewell. Back in Chelmsford, the local community was left stunned. Though many of them had never met Ashley personally, they had followed her story through church connections and social networks. During questioning, Jack told police that he had experienced a mental breakdown, claiming he had gone psychotic. But this narrative did not hold up under scrutiny. A comprehensive psychiatric evaluation determined that Jack had full awareness of his actions and that he was mentally competent to stand trial. These findings confirmed what Ashley's loved ones had feared. Jack had not lost control in a moment of mental illness. He had made deliberate, conscious decisions, fully aware of their consequences. Even more disturbing were the revelations that followed. As investigators dug deeper, Ashley's family discovered that Jack had a long history of controlling and manipulative behavior. They learned of previous relationships marked by emotional instability and psychological pressure. Long before Ashley Wadsworth became part of his life, troubling patterns had already begun to emerge in Jack Seal's behavior. In the year 2014, Seal began an online relationship with a young girl, well before he met Ashley. What might have appeared to be a typical digital connection between teenagers quickly unraveled into something more alarming. Seal's behavior turned intrusive and inappropriate. At one point, without the girl's knowledge or consent, he took private photographs of her. This act alone revealed a lack of respect for her autonomy and privacy. When the girl eventually decided to end the relationship, Seal reacted with hostility. In an act that betrayed the trust once shared, he posted those unauthorized images online, exposing the girl in a way that left her emotionally devastated. Her response was swift and serious. She sought legal protection, and a restraining order was granted by the court to ensure her safety and limit further contact. The same year, 2014, saw yet another troubling incident that unfolded within his own home. This time, it was not a romantic partner, but his own mother, who was on the receiving end of his escalating aggression. A disagreement, reportedly centered around an Xbox console, turned violent. In a fit of anger, Seal shoved his mother to the ground and caused significant property damage by ripping a door off its hinges. What may have started as a verbal argument quickly became physical, showing a clear inability to regulate his emotions or resolve conflict without resorting to force. Despite these serious incidents, legal protections can only last so long. When the restraining order obtained by the first girl expired in 2017, Seal took that as an opportunity to resume contact. Although the young woman had made it clear she wanted no further communication, choosing to ignore his messages, Seal refused to let go. He continued reaching out, sending increasingly disturbing texts. In January of 2018, he sent her a message that was particularly alarming. It read, "Please reply. You are never going to get rid of me. Even if I have to go to prison over you, I'll see you soon, and I will turn up wherever you live." This wasn't just a plea for attention. It was an open declaration of his unwillingness to let her live her life in peace. By that time, Jack Seal had already begun his relationship with Ashley Wadsworth. Meanwhile, back in his home life, things continued to spiral. In July 2018, Seal's own mother, having already been subjected to his aggressive behavior once before, felt compelled to take legal action against her son. She requested a restraining order after another disturbing episode at home. That day, Seal once again damaged her property. He destroyed a door, vandalized her car, and broke multiple windows in her house. The justice system responded by sentencing him to 8 weeks in a juvenile correctional facility. This sentence was intended not only as punishment, but also as an opportunity for rehabilitation. Yet, it would become clear that meaningful change was not on the horizon. Only 2 months after his release, in September 2018, Seal violated yet another restraining order. His consistent disregard for legal consequences and repeated targeting of women showed a troubling escalation. The following month, he was back in court again, this time for attempting to unlawfully enter a care facility. Though the details surrounding the incident were not widely publicized, the court found him guilty, and he was sentenced to an additional 21 days in prison. Fast forward to March 20th, 2020, and once again, Seal was using social media to meet new people. He connected with a woman on Facebook, and before long, they began living together. Initially, everything may have seemed normal, but things deteriorated rapidly. It soon became clear to the woman that Seal's behavior was far from stable. He was extremely jealous, quick to anger, and his mood swings created a household environment that was emotionally unsafe. When the woman decided she had had enough and made the decision to leave the relationship, Seal reacted with panic and aggression. Instead of allowing her to leave peacefully, he physically restrained her, preventing her from exiting the house. This situation could have become even more dangerous had she not managed to think quickly and find a way out. She escaped through a window and fled to safety, an action that likely saved her from further harm. This wasn't the only woman who had gone through such an ordeal with Seal. Authorities would later learn of yet another incident involving a different woman who reported similar behavior. By this point, Seal had amassed a disturbing criminal history. He'd been convicted of a total of 12 offenses, with the vast majority being incidents of interpersonal aggression and coercion. These were not just criminal acts. They were indicators of a deeply rooted pattern of behavior that placed others at constant risk. In September 2022, the case that had been building for years finally reached the courtroom. Jack Seal stood trial for taking the life of 19-year-old Ashley Wadsworth. a young woman who had traveled internationally in hopes of starting a new chapter with someone she believed cared about her. During the trial, Seal chose to plead guilty to the charge. The prosecution presented a deeply moving and meticulously documented case, filled with testimony from neighbors, friends, and individuals who had witnessed troubling signs in the days leading up to Ashley's death. One of the most heartbreaking pieces of evidence presented in court were the voice messages Ashley had sent to her friends. In those recordings, she described the escalating nature of the relationship and expressed real fear. In one message, Seal could be heard making threats that, in hindsight, revealed just how dangerous the situation had become. These recordings painted a powerful picture of a young woman trying to hold on to hope while slowly recognizing the threat that was unfolding around her. The judge presiding over the trial did not hold back in his remarks. He described Seal's actions as brutal and cowardly, noting that the violence directed at Ashley was part of a long-standing pattern. The judge cited Seal's 8 prior convictions, which spanned 12 individual offenses, nearly all of them related to controlling, harmful, or aggressive behavior toward women. These past actions, the judge stated, created a clear and deeply troubling pattern of behavior that showed no signs of improvement or accountability. On October 10, 2022, the court handed down its final sentence. Jack Seal was sentenced to life in prison,